Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this build, this is a full Malekith build. We're going to be covering the Black Blade. I did a build on this about 5 or 6 months ago, but I wanted to do an updated one on it because I've had a lot of people ask me about it. This is a really powerful and fun build. Let's get into the details. This is New Game Plus 7 on this character. I believe currently Journey 17. We're going to take on the Fire Giant to start with the Black Blade here. If you're not subbed, definitely be sure to sub to this channel. Also, there's a Discord that's in the description below. Be sure to join that as well. Let's get into this build. So the Black Blade's Ash of War unique skill is Destined Death, and it can be quite good. I mean, we've all been there when he's used it in the boss fight on us, and if you don't roll directly behind him, you end up getting hit by it for massive percentage damage, and it has, relatively speaking, the same effect. It's really powerful against larger targets too because of the percentage damage, and it can hit quite hard. Now, it does have a long animation to deal with though, so that is something that you're going to have to get used to, as the sword simply swoops around essentially, lands into the ground, and then pulls off the Destined Death. It is something that does take a little bit of time to use the weapon skill, so sometimes you may get hit out of it. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of hyper armor, but when it does hit, it absolutely smacks, given the percentage damage, the physical and holy damage. Speaking of which, by the way, all the stats here as far as the weapon skill are split between faith mainly and strength. Now, dexterity would increase very minimally, so you're not going to invest too much in that. You're mainly, as I mentioned, going to go for strength and faith, and strength is going to be the physical portion of the weapon, when faith is going to make up for that holy damage, which includes the Ash of War, since it does both holy and physical damage. Now we're going to be on to phase 2 of the Fire Giant and continue this awesome fight. Throughout this fight, I possibly didn't get hit. I couldn't remember for sure as I'm recording over this, but I'm pretty sure I didn't get hit. It was a little bit hard to pull off this Ash of War. I did have to fight him twice. The first time I actually let him kill me, simply for the fact that in his second phase I ran out of FP, and I didn't want to run around hitting him with the sword. I wanted to show off the Ash of War, so I went back in a second time, and it went much smoother. I made sure I landed each Ash of War, each weapon skill, and made better use of it, because when it hits at the right position, and all the damage on the Ash of War hits, it does a ton, including the percentage damage, the physical damage, and the holy damage. It combines for a lot in total and can be quite powerful. And let's be honest, this is one of those weapons that you're going to have a good time using too, simply for the fact that it has a really unique and cool looking Ash of War weapon skill, and it's something that when utilized correctly, you can make use of to do massive damage. And granted, it is holy damage, but you get that percentage damage, and that makes up for some of the resistances in the game too. As you can see, the Fire Giant took massive damage because he's such a large target with a lot of HP from the percentage part. Taking on some field bosses, I decided to mix in a couple different things. The other one I wanted to use was the Black Knife, and then I wanted to use the Black Blade Incantation. An important note here. The Black Blade Incantation will stack percentage-wise. You only get one debuff, but it will stack with either the Black Blade, Malekith's Black Blade, or the Black Knife. It will not stack with both or all three. It just stacks with one of the two. Now, with that being said, it matters a lot more with the Black Knife because the Black Knife is easier to combo with the Black Blade Incantation, given the fact that Malekith's Black Blade has a very, very long wind-up and everything, and it's just a long animation in general. They're a little bit more difficult to combo. The Black Knife and the Black Blade Incantation, though, are fairly easy and straightforward to combo if you put a seal in your left hand, and it becomes really fun to use those two together. Now, I did run into one issue that I didn't like as far as the Black Blade, the weapon itself goes. As far as dragons and a couple other things with a little bit weirder hitboxes, I found it a little bit more difficult to land simply by the fact that they have like thin legs, for example, and it doesn't seem to hit all of it. And it's a little more powerful against larger targets where you can get the contact on the entire Ash of War, as opposed to the dragon here, who I had a little bit of trouble landing the Ash of War Destined Death on, given the fact that their hitboxes are a little bit different. But I did have the Black Knife as a backup, and then I had the Black Blade Incantation as a backup as well. As long as you're investing in faith and you have that 12 minimum dex, you're going to be able to use the Black Knife too, and then you'll be able to use the Black Blade Incantation. Although I did mess up and I ended up being a point off of my stats, so I had to use the faith tier to use it, because you need 46 faith and I ended up with 45. But generally speaking, at 150, you can run all three of these. And running all three of these together makes for a fantastic combination for a Malekith cosplay type build, and in general to just take advantage of the whole Destined Death and percentage damage theme. And it's really enjoyable if you're able to pull these off too, because they have really good payoffs. As I mentioned, that percentage damage is something that's a huge benefit and bonus, especially to larger targets, because they tend to take more since it is a percentage of their HP. It can do massive damage, and they're all very fun to use too. Really like combination builds. Combination builds can be some of the most enjoyable builds because you're not sticking to any specific one thing. You can throw in different incantations if you want to. And by the way, I'm going to show this off on a death bird, how much damage you can get out of this. It does result in me getting beat up a little bit, but you're going to see the holy damage and how powerful it can be against death birds. So I know, no hit on the fire giant, but when it comes to the death bird here, I end up almost getting killed. And this is actually one of the easiest ones in the game to boot, but I just wanted to show off the holy damage. It does do a lot of damage to him in general, and you're going to see the black knife as well. Specifically, does massive damage because, again, it's pure holy damage. So if you're having any trouble with the death birds, these are fantastic weapons to fight them with. As long as you're rocking holy, let's be realistic, as far as any of the death birds go, they're not going to be too troublesome for you because they take additional holy damage, and it's a fantastic way to make use out of holy. It's generally a highly resisted type, but the percentage damage here gives us a little bit more of a benefit to push past some of those resistances. Now, as far as mobs go, this is something that can absolutely slap because the physical AR, the split damage on the weapon, is quite good, and mobs don't have a ton of resistances, so they're easy to defeat simply by doing jump attacks, charge attacks, regular hits, and whatnot. It's a powerful regular weapon in terms of AR. You'll have no trouble whatsoever as far as mobs go, and you could always take the black knife out too if you want to do some range damage to some mobs in the game, and that can absolutely destroy them. They're always going to take the percentage damage. And then as you're going to see here, Destined Death is really fun to use against mobs as well because it has a giant window and hitbox. It's a large area and reach, so you could take out several mobs, several groups at the same time with ease. All right, let's get into stats, equipment, and everything you guys need to know. For equipment, we have Malekith's Black Blade plus 10. We have the Black Knife. We have the Erdtree Seal because it scales well with Faith. We have his armor set on, Shard of Alexander, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragoncrest, preferably the Great Shield. We have the Holy tier, and then I threw in the Faith tier as well. Give us some additional damage. Now let's get into stats for this build. So for stats, we went for at least 50 Vigor, and then as far as Strength and Faith, I just split between the two the best I can. Generally speaking, if you can get as close to possible as 50 Strength, 50 Faith, if you can get close to that range, you're going to get a lot of damage out of the Ash of War and the weapon itself because it seems to be pretty split between the Faith stat and the Strength stat in terms of the weapon skill and the weapon itself. These are solid all around 150 stats. You're going to get a lot of damage out of the weapon, and you can keep a good amount of poise and resistances as far as your armor goes as well. Let's get into buffs. For buffs for this build, we use our tier first, then we're going to use Golden Vow. You throw in Blessing's Boon if you want to. I'm using Howl Shabriri to generically boost it by 25% in terms of the Ash of War weapon skill. And then we get to use that awesome Black Blade incantation and then Destined Death. A whole bunch of different things that we can use in combination. It's a lot of fun to run this. Hope this video was helpful, by the way. A lot of people asked me whether or not I'd put this in the S or an A category when I did my recent tier list. I'd put this in a B. I believe it's a solid B. It's a little bit slow as far as the windup, but it does a good amount of damage. It has high AR, and it does have good amounts of uses too, given the fact that it does percentage damage on top of the holy damage. Not on the Discord, by the way, definitely be sure to join it. There's over 400 people in there. And if you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.